Good day, everybody. So here we are to discuss another important and very interesting concept, that is modernization and issues of modernization in developing countries. In this lecture, we are going to discuss the various features of modernization, causes of modernization, the various components of modernization, the idea as to what modernization is all about, the effects which it has on the economies. We'll discuss some of the negative impacts, the whole journey of modernization, and what goals does the modernization lead the people of a country, especially in the developing countries. We'll be talking about countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The three continents which have countries which need modernization, which are already on the process of modernization, where the journey is a mixed bag with mixed results, but still we are moving towards modernizing our economy, imbibing new things, absorbing new things, molding them according to our situation. Now, what is modernization? It is a multifaceted concept, a very dynamic one, a concept which is comprehensive and which talks about change. Now, there are people critics who say that modernization is a negative phenomena, and there are others who say that it might be a negative phenomena, but it is a process from which we cannot turn ourselves. We cannot turn our back towards it. We have to go towards the future with the process of modernization. So modernization is a process which talks about a flow of ideas. It talks about influx of new ideas, new thought, new way of living. It talks about, it is usually desirable. Sometimes it might be forced or foisted on you, and then you realize the results later on that yes, modernization was the need of the hour. It is a concept which is very dynamic because it talks about evolving, it talks about moving ahead. Yes, in some places that moving ahead has come at a cost. We'll discuss about it later. But more or less, modernization means imbibing the new. And in this chapter, in this lecture, we are going to discuss that what are the obstacles in the process of modernization, and how we are facing them or how we are removing them, and how we are molding them to move into a better future. Modernization is a very complex process. It occurs usually when it is accepted. In other cases, when it is not desired from the people, but might be healthy for them, it can be forced upon them. So modernization takes on new forms with every situation, every generation, in every country. So it is very complex, in which there's a lot of give and take from both the sides. And the population has to go with the flow of ideas and accept the new. Now, modernization started from the United Kingdom, where the Industrial Revolution came in. Industries were set up in a great speed. It led to a change in the social, economic and political fabric of United Kingdom, where there was mass migration of people who were dependent on agriculture in the rural sector, who migrated to the cities, to the towns, in search of work which was readily available, as they were told, in the industries which are set up in the various towns and cities like Leeds, Manchester, and so on. And then the idea spread to the whole world, where modernization was adapted by every country according to its own definition, according to its own parameters. Modernization embodies hope. It's usually a hope for a better future, for a better standard of living. Now coming to United Kingdom, which I just told you, talked about was the first country to have industrial revolution. The industrial revolution was heralded in the country because of new inventions, a lot of innovation, saving, and an urge to grow as an economy and as a country. United Kingdom, as you know, commanded the 7 seas. They had a navy which was enviable. They had, because it's an island nation, they had to expand to survive. So the only way till the Air Force did not come in was commanding the seas, ruling the seas, making colonies, getting back raw material for the industries, taking the manufactured goods back into the colonies and to the various markets in Europe, Asia, so on and so forth. So the United Kingdom had an abundant labor force, about which I just talked, because agriculture was in dire strait. There was abundant workforce employed in agriculture, which we know is disguised employment, where 5 people would be working on an acre, on a hectare, which needs only 3. So the 2 who were just absorbed in agriculture but really not producing anything walked up to the cities and towns to find work. So there was an abundant labor force. Of course, because of that abundant labor force, a lot of exploitation also happened, which led to the rich becoming the richer and the rich exploiting the poor, because if they asked for 10 laborers, there were 100 standing in the queue, which led to paying them less wages, hoarding of wealth by the rich, and so on and so forth. So United Kingdom was the one which takes the credit for the modernization process. Now, modernization does not really mean modernity. It means imbibing the values and moving from one stage to the other in such a way that you keep with you whatever good is there in your civilization, in your traditions, in your culture, and molding them a little with something which we can absorb from the other cultures, right? Now, in India, the modernization in developing countries takes up altogether new connotations. The developing countries are in a quandary. They are in a confusion with the process of modernization, whether to modernize or not. If yes, at what speed, how much, what to take, what to make obsolete of their own civilization. If the other answer is no to modernization, then why not? Or can we survive without modernization? So in the developing countries, this question and answer session of modernization carries on along with the process of modernization. Now, there are critics who say that India, for example, has not followed the Gandhian concept of development at all. Yes, in the directive principles of state policy, we do give a budget for the village and small scale industries. But then the big industries rule the world. Mass production rules the world. Mahatma Gandhi talked about decentralization. We have implemented decentralization by the 73rd and 74th Amendment by giving power to the village panchayats and to municipal corporations and municipal committees. A very recent achievement, the 73rd and 74th Amendments are very recent achievements, and much needs to be done to implement them in a proper way. Yes, elections to the panchayats and the municipal corporation is held, but not at the way they are held now, because a lot of money and muscle power is used in the elections. So Mahatma Gandhi's idea of modernization has been, as critics say, left somewhere on the way. But India has decided to modernize itself and move ahead by passing very progressive laws. But along with it, especially with the present government, which talks about Hindutva, we are trying to balance between our ancient tradition, culture, and the process of modernization. Marx, the famous philosopher, the German philosopher, said, industrialization is a necessary evil. He said, when you have industries, workers come there for employment, they talk with each other, they share their stories of exploitation, their grievances, and they bind together and they fight for their rights. No wonder he said, workers of the world unite, you have nothing but your chains to lose. So he said, industrialization will only accelerate the process of revolution in which the proletariat will rise up against the bourgeois and crush them, finish them off, and there'll be a classless and stateless society. He said that in countries like India, China, all the developing countries, this process will only usher in a new era of goodwill and of the workers being liberated. That is why he talked about banning religion, and he said religion is the opium of the masses. Now, a stage-wise steps given by David Apter are very, very important, who talks about modernization in a few stages. He says, stage one, in the stage one, what will happen? The colonial powers, like the British, who ventured into making colonies in India, in Asia, and the Portuguese who went into Africa to get to harness colonies. In the first stage, these colonial powers go into colonies or into new lands for adventure, but mostly for trade, for profit, and number 3, to have a missionary zeal. That is, to convert people of the uncivilized world into a civilized world, that is, of the Western world. So, as you all know, the theory of the white man's burden, the color of our skin, that is brown and black, as in Africa and Asia, makes us inferior to the white man who boasts of a white skin, and that is why he is superior. Now, the theory is that we, the people of Africa, Asia, are uncivilized, and they need to be taught how to live in a civilization. And who is going to teach us that? It is the white man who is going to teach us that. How to eat, how to dress up, how to be educated, everything about hygiene, everything will be taught to us by the white man. Never mind that they brush off our argument that, for example, the Hindu civilization is a very old civilization. We might not eat and dress up like them, but the Hindu civilization boasts of astronomers, we boast of scientists, we boast of the best of literature in the form of Vedas, Upanishads, and all that which we had when the Westerners came to India. So brushing aside all our achievements just because the color of the skin was different, and we did not eat and live like them. We sat on the floor and had our food. The Indians wore dhotis because that suited our climate. Because we did not wear trousers, tight-fitting clothes, or take the example of Vietnamese who kept long hair, we were supposed to be uncivilized. So the white man thought that in the first stage, I've come here for adventure, or I've come here for profit, for profit or for trade. So along with it, I have to do the missionary zeal. That is, to convert these people, uncivilized people, into my way of living, my way of eating, and my way of dressing up. And in doing all this, and in converting the people into Christianity, into his religion, If the colonial power takes a little bit of resources, which we call exploitation, if the colonial power takes a little bit of our natural resources, it's just a small payment for teaching us how to live in a civilization, brushing away the fact that India, a country like India, had a very rich past where gigantic steps had been taken in the fields of literature, science, and technology. So, according to David Apter, stage 1 means when the colonial power entered Asia, Africa, these countries, the British, the Portuguese, and all these colonial powers, and they came in for profit, but slowly they started hobnobbing with the natives, as they called us, with the natives. And in the initial stage, they did not have any contact. They did not want to come in contact with the natives because they found us inferior. But slowly they started, hobnobbing with the local elite which had come up because of the policies followed by the colonial power, in which among the natives, they helped create a local elite which helped them in administrating the country, which helped them to increase their profits. In the process, the local elite got a little share of the profit, which made them apart. So once they started, they came in contact, the white man came in contact with the small elite, and were introduced to the various cultures, they decided to reform our societies, they decided to modernize our societies. In stage 2, there was a close contact between the local elite and their foreign counterparts. They both worked together to reap profits. The effort of the colonial master was to spread health and educational facilities, but the sense of superiority continued. It was always there. The negative effects were that the colonial masters struck at the root of our traditions and cultures. They tried to wipe away whatever good was there in our societies. Let me give you 2 examples. The Guru Shishya Parampara, which was something the Indians prided themselves upon, in which a guru set up a school either in the temple courtyard or in his own house or by the land donated to him by the village people who wanted education for their children. There was no classroom, there was no fees, there were no textbooks, there was no attendance, and the children paid the guru in kind. For example, a cobbler's son would gift a pair of shoes to the guru, and the guru taught all of them together, and any child who had a great potential was given special attention by the guru. So all the learning was oral. The children were taught orally, and it was and taught in their mother tongue, which led them to be very, very proud about their culture and heritage. They were taught skills also. No attendance meant that during the harvest season, every member of the family, including the children, used to help in the fields. So officially the school would be off for 2 months. So even the poorest of the poor could send their children to school, could educate their children, because the school would be off on a certain time. There was no attendance problem. So a very good way in which the child learned skill also and was educated also. The Britishers came, and with them they brought classrooms, an end to creativity, textbooks, attendance problem, fee structure, and so on and so forth. And when a guru did not adhere to their guidelines, the grants stopped coming. Slowly, the gurus found it very difficult to run schools by themselves, and the Guru Shishya Parampara just died down. Another good example is of the Tonkin Free School in Vietnam. The school, the name might be free, but it was not free. The school was opened by the French, and it was known as Tonkin Free School. It was run in the evening, in which education was given in French, and the Vietnamese were taught about science, technology, hygiene. And one condition to attend that school was to wear trousers, that is the Western clothes, and the Vietnamese have a tradition of keeping long hair. The children were told to cut hair and then come to the classes. So slowly, in these two cases, what do we see? That in the second stage, the colonial masters, it might be the French in Vietnam or the British in India, they struck at the traditional culture, customs of the country, making us feel inferior, making the brown man, the native, feel that it is better to leave his customs and ape the West. In stage 3, the demand for participation by the local elite starts off as a feeble voice but becomes stronger. The colonial master is not ready for it. He's ready to appease the local elite. And in this, we can give the example of the formation of the Indian National Congress, formed by A.O. Hume in India, in which the Britishers said that the local elite will be able to come and work along with the colonial master, and we will work for the benefit of the colony. The same Indian National Congress, when asked for more and more participation, it was called a microscopic minority by Lord Dufferin, that it did not represent the Indian masses. So the third stage is when the local elite asks for more powers, more participation in running the affairs of the state. It is not liked by the colonial master, and the local elite takes to the roads, takes to the streets, and creates awareness among the people to come forward and help them ask for more participation in the political process. Stage 4 is a very dynamic stage, very interesting stage, a very challenging state, a stage in which the local elite and the common people come together and ask for freedom, complete freedom, which is a very harsh demand according to the colonial master. They do not want to give freedom to the colony, saying the colony will not be able to fend for itself. The excuses are many, but the voice becomes so strong that the freedom has to be given to the people, because the local people and the elite are one. The divide and policy divide and rule policy, which is followed by the colonial masters, is weakened a little, though it ultimately led to the partition of India. But for some time, people come together. So you have the non-cooperation movement, the civil disobedience movement, in which in India, for example, the Indians showed their strength, their unity, solidarity, and finally the colonial master was driven away. Now comes freedom. Once you have freedom, then the process of modernization starts according to the wishes of the people of the country, the citizens of the country. So what happens once the country gets its freedom? The task of nation building starts. The task of modernization starts. The task of competing with the other states, not losing the essence of one's own culture starts. And this is where the process of modernization comes in. After freedom, after liberation, the local elite naturally become the stakeholders. They are the ones who emerge as the new leaders. There's a lot of enthusiasm among the people. There's euphoria. People are very happy with the change of government. The government is their own. The same set of leaders, when they were not the prime minister or president of the country, had led them on the streets, had promised them the moon, had promised them fulfillment of all their basic needs, eradication of poverty, illiteracy, malnutrition, all the problems. So the freedom is met with a sense of enthusiasm, happiness, and a lot of expectations which were promised to the people once the colonial master would be driven away. But slowly, magic does not happen. As we all know, a colony, when it becomes a nation, is infested with too many problems. Of course, you have poverty, illiteracy, women in a bad shape, malnutrition, high infant mortality rate, name it, there are all problems. Plus, the colony has been badly exploited by the colonial master. In case of India, it was divided into two countries, India and Pakistan. So you had problem of millions of people who had to migrate, which is known as the biggest transfer of population in the world, resettlement of refugees, women suffering again in this process, because they say, men make war, women and children suffer. So resettlement of refugees, the problems are many. So the initial euphoria turns into disappointment. The people start viewing the fact that the colonial masters were doing a better job. They start feeling bad that there was a transfer of power in the first sense. The leaders have a very, very challenging task in hand to appease the people while on the path of nation building. The bureaucracy which was created during the colonial masters' time emerges as a very big factor. They are there to make policies, but they are also there to mar the development process in many ways. For example, India for a long time, till 1990-91, was known as the license Raj. Why? Because the bureaucrats had to be taken into confidence before making any policy. So the bureaucrats continue to hold power. Rather, freedom gives them with the lack of politicians who are experts. The bureaucrats get a larger than life image. There is a phenomenal increase in their power and prestige, and they do not want to let go of the colonial signs, and they want to stick to it, because all those powers given to them by the colonial power master only added to their becoming more and more powerful. In the later stages, there's emergence of vote bank, leaders hoard wealth, there's concentration of wealth by a few. Progressive laws are made, but there's a gap between theory and practice. In the case of India, the vote bank is there, but along with that, you have the dynasty rule, where the whole country is being run by a few families. So dynasty rule is one of the biggest curses of the Indian political system. Besides that, you have a vote bank on the basis of caste, region. Then there is a concentration of wealth in the hands of a few. So these are the problems in India when it comes to modernization, and which does not let the process of modernization move at a uniform speed. The government in India is racing against time to implement the idea of a welfare state, but still women, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes are left behind. There are many people who are still on the margins of the society. They have to be included in the development process, a very tough task, but the tribals, for example, refuse to be included in the modernization process. They derive their livelihood from the forest, which is the resource of all the minerals, natural resources. It is the source of their livelihood. Now, the mafia of politicians and businessmen wants to take up the control of forests, and tribals have been displaced in many places. In some places, the tribals are protesting against it because they want due compensation, or they do not want to move away from the land of their ancestors. But the mafia of the nexus between the politician and the businessman is another curse of the Indian society. But the people at the margins, for example, the tribals, have to be included so that the idea of a welfare state and modernization is attained. Now we come to Africa. Africa, another continent, a fragmented society, where people are divided on not only on the basis of elites and the natives, but on the basis of tribes also. Slavery is one cause which is one factor which has troubled the African continent. People have been bought and sold like cattle. They were transferred to plantations in America and other continents to work as slaves in the other countries. Again, the local elite benefited a lot from this slave trade in connivance with the foreign players. So Africa has a different set of problems which is stopping it, which is proving to be obstacle in the way of the development process. In Africa, the tribal people's rich land is being snatched from them. They are being displaced from their land. The practice of apartheid, discrimination on the basis of color, has made the sense of inferiority very, very strong among the Africans. Political instability is there, which has led to a lot of totalitarian regimes being set up and democracy taking a toss and being thrown out of the country. So in regimes, the process of development and modernization is slowed down, or rather it comes to a halt. In Latin America again, there are a lot of totalitarian regimes. The local elite lets in progress, lets in new winds of change at its own whims and fancies. There is poverty among people, illiteracy among people, lot of deaths of women and children because of lack of hospitals and good medical aid. Education does not even meet the basic parameters in many of the countries, which has led to a lot of emergence of many gangs in the continent. Latin America is one country which reports of many street fights, which is a result of all the dissatisfaction, disillusionment among the people. Now, how do we summarize this? The path of modernization is strewn with obstacles. There are obstacles, but they have to be crossed over. The local elite has to play a very, very responsible role. They will not part away with their wealth, which they have accumulated over centuries, but they should learn how to share a little bit of it in such a way that the whole country progresses. The local elite and the leaders have to play a very, very positive, constructive role to make the idea of modernization a success and a reality in the developing countries. Thank you.